Hi, DaNadia. It's great to talk to you. Can you please start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what your background is in education?
Yeah, so I am a learning designer at eSpark. I've been doing this for about a year, transitioned from the classroom where I was an elementary educator. However, I did go to school for middle grades education and psychology. So, ended up in elementary and started teaching there for about 5 years, and also was a literacy coordinator and interventionist for 1 year.
At what point did the science of reading first get on your radar?
I would say it wasn't formally introduced to me within my teacher training, or in my time as a teacher, really. I would say it was kind of my own discovery. The charter school that I was serving as a literacy coordinator for um, needed someone to run a literacy program for the summer. We had a grant for some type of virtual literacy program after the pandemic hit, where students were, a little behind because of the school situation. And I decided to kind of build out a Rising Readers program. And that's when I kind of discovered it on my own, but didn't really have enough time or resources to kind of really educate myself on it further. Um, Also, with that, I saw a need, or I had parents coming to me saying that their students were behind after the pandemic. And so I started tutoring some students that I knew. And that's kind of when I dug into it a little bit more and started to play with those strategies. But once again, I just didn't really have the time to kind of dig into everything that the science of reading entails.
So, knowing what you know now, if you were to go back and maybe speak to the administration at the school where you started, what do you think could have been done differently to better prepare you to serve these emergent readers?
First and foremost, I think curriculum. The district that I worked at was really big on autonomy, really big on having professional development around unpacking standards and how to vet and choose activities that aligned with standards. That's where a lot of time was spent. But I feel like just providing a curriculum to kind of help guide my own teaching of it would have been helpful. The school district at the time that I worked for was very big on autonomy. So all the different schools within the district had their autonomy with what curriculum they were using, how they were teaching, what resources they provided. So no one school was the same, which then presents a a kind of a hard thing to do at a kind of school district professional development level. They couldn't really provide us with the appropriate instruction for emergent readers because every school was doing something different.
Okay, so one of the things we hear about most when we talk about the science of reading is the emphasis on systematic and explicit instruction. So, starting with that explicit part, when you're working in an online environment, what are some of the steps you take to make sure that instruction remains clear, direct, and concise?
Yeah, I would say when building learning experiences now, we are providing students with a framing video to kind of frame the lesson, which is similar to what I used to do as an educator by providing that learning target and that opportunity for students to understand what they're learning and why they're learning. So just that explicit real world connection. So kind of providing a within a quest, we are providing that video that says, hey, this is what you're learning. This is the strategy that you'll use to learn it, and kind of repeating again, this is what you're learning, so that students going into the quest know exactly what it is that they're learning and kind of how to master that skill, really.
So then how about the systematic part of that? How do you ensure students have the requisite background knowledge when planning out the sequence of instruction?
The biggest thing is backwards design, kind of thinking about the end in mind. So thinking about that end goal of what do you want the student to do? What is mastery? And then kind of unpacking that and taking a look at what they need to know in order to get there. So if the goal is for a student to be able to read by the end of grade 1, what does that student need to know? What are those prerequisites? What is that background knowledge that students need to know to get there? And how can we build out a scope and sequence to get them there? So say, for instance, in order for a student to be able to read, they have to blend words, but they can't blend words unless they have the knowledge of long vowel sounds, vowel teams, blends, digraphs, sounds, letter sounds. They can't, then blend. So it's kind of that backwards approach where we're looking at what is the end goal and what do we need to do to get them there? And if that's letter sounds, then we kind of have to start there and then build our way back to that end goal.
So obviously an online environment differs from the classroom in that you only have students for short bursts of time. So how do you effectively weave all 5 components of reading, well, 6 if we include the oral component, into their learning paths?
Yeah, I would say that kind of based on the standard that they're working on, that with their adaptive pathway, they're exposed to all of these areas. They may not be exposed to them at one time, but they're all woven within the learning path. There's also opportunities for us to provide critical thinking questions that also will kind of challenge that vocabulary that they within the program. I would also say that I think the biggest thing here that also the science of reading does back up is that reading comprehension is a product of language comprehension and word recognition. So those 2 components are super important. And I think especially in the K-2, we kind of focus a lot on that word recognition and those 2 pieces so that later on when they get into those upper grades, that reading comprehension is easier for them and is something that they can develop. So I would say, although they may not be exposed and it may not be intertwined within all one activity, they're still being exposed with their adaptive pathway when it's right for them.
Finally, I'll say early reading instruction is hard. It's certainly not always fun, but what are some of the things you can do to keep students engaged with the program while also laying the foundation for them to become the strongest readers they can be?
I would say that we try to build learning experiences that are age appropriate. So things that they are going to relate to and understand and get excited about. I would also say we really try to build curriculum and learning experiences that are also accessible and somewhat diverse so that a student can see themselves within the activity and they're better able to kind of relate to that. I think science of reading is awesome, and it's a good way to teach all students, no matter what they're kind of facing. I think I'm excited to kind of dig into it a lot more and see how we can maybe incorporate more of these strategies and this approach within our own design and within our own learning experiences. So I think, this interview kind of made me kind of even more excited to kind of dig in to this topic and learn how I can better create learning experiences that serve all students.